Yashodanandana Braja Jannaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jannaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashotarashata Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashotarashata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Brahmsiko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the Samal devotees. All glories to the Samal devotees. All glories to the Samal devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Krishna 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Bhagavate.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter number 1, entitled The First Step in God Realization. And today we're reading from text number 8. Idam Bhagavatam Srimad Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Adhitavan Dwapara Ado Pituhu Dvaipayanat Aham Idang Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Adhitavan Dvaparado Pitur Dvaipayanadaham Idang Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Adhitavan Dvaparado Pitur Dvaipayanadaham Idang Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Adhitavan Dvaparado Pitur Dvaipayanadaham
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Aditavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Idang Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranang Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Ritavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado Piturdvaipayanadaham
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Ivantam Brahma Samhitam
Aditavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Piturdvaipayanadaham Idam Bhagavatam Nama Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Puranam Brahma Samhitam Adhitavan Dvaparado Adhitavan Dvaparado Adaham Piturdvaipayanadaham
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Aditavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvaipayanad
Piturdvaipayanadaham Idam Bhagavatam Nama Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Aditavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Piturdvaipayanadaham
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Aditavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvapayanadaham
Piturdvaipayanadaham. Are there some chanters online?
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Adhitavan Dvaparado
Piturdvapayanad Aham
Piturdvaipayanadaham Idam, this, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, Nama, of the name, Puranam, Vedic supplement, Brahma Samhitam, approved as the essence of the Vedas, Adhitavan, studied, Dwapara Ado, at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, Pituhu, from my father, Dvaipayanat, Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, Aham, myself. Translation. At the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Purport. The statement made by Srila Shukadeva Goswami that the topmost transcendentalist, who is beyond the jurisdiction of regulations and restrictions, mainly takes to the task of hearing about and glorifying the personality of Godhead, is verified by his personal example. Shukadeva Goswami, being a recognized liberated soul and the topmost transcendentalist, was accepted by all of the topmost sages present in the meeting during the last 7 days of Maharaj Parikshit. He cites from the example of his life that he himself was attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord, and he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Sri Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam, or, for that matter, any other scientific literature, cannot be studied at home by one's own intellectual capacity. Medical books of anatomy or physiology are available in the market, but no one can become a qualified medical practitioner simply by reading such books at home. One has to be admitted to the medical college and study the books under the guidance of learned professors. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate study of the science of Godhead, can only be learned by studying it at the feet of a realized soul like Srila Vyasadeva. Although Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father Vyasadeva, who compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of another great soul, Sri Narada Muni. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed a learned Brahmana to study. Pardon me. Srimad Bhagavatam from a personal Bhagavata. Srimad Bhagavatam is based on the transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, entourage, and variegatedness of the Supreme Person, and it is spoken by the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, Srila Vyasadeva. Pastimes of the Lord are executed in cooperation with his pure devotees, and consequently historical incidences are mentioned in this great literature because they are related to Krishna. It is called Brahma Samhitam because it is the sound representative of Lord Krishna, like the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the sound incarnation of the Lord because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representative of the Lord because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. As stated in the beginning of this book, it is the essence of the Vedic desire tree and the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras, the topmost philosophical thesis on the subject matter of Brahman. Vyasadeva appeared at the end of Dwapara Yuga as the son of Satyavati, and therefore the word Dwapara Ado, or the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, in this context means just prior to the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The logic of this statement, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, is comparable to that of calling the upper portion of the tree the beginning. The root of the tree is the beginning of the tree. But in common knowledge, the upper portion of the tree is seen first. In that way, the end of the tree is accepted as its beginning. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Adhitavan Dwaparado Pitur Dvaipayanaraham. Translation. At the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva.
The name of Vyasadeva is Dvaipayana Vyas. And he got that name because, as we heard, his mother was Satyavati. And Satyavati was the daughter of a fisherman. And she used to take boats across to ferry passengers, persons who wanted to go across the river. So she would take them across. And it so happened that one day Parasara Muni, great sage, came and was on her boat. And he proposed that he give her a son. And she objected, of course, because it's not proper, she's not married. But he convinced her that he would give her a very great sage as her son, who would compile all the Vedas. And there's a history to Satyavati. She was not an ordinary woman, but very elevated from the higher regions. Anyway, in order so that she would agree, Parasara Muni arranged, there was an island in the middle of the river. And so he arranged that they would have their union there, and the child would be born there right away. So that island, Dvipa means island, so Dvaipayana means he was born on that island. And he grew up and went away right away. So that's a little background on the name Dvaipayana.
Thank you so much. So Vyasadeva, we can see his birth is very special. This Parashara Muni is a great Vedic authority, and he gives as far as I understand, recall, he gives a definition of the word Bhagavan. So he's a learned transcendentalist and devotee of the Lord, and so his son Vyasadeva is also very special. That actually continued also to Shukadeva Goswami. And in this purport, Prabhupada is discussing how one has to make a study of the science of God in particular the Srimad Bhagavatam, by studying from learned teachers, learned professors, that we can purchase the books, but we can't really become recognized or sufficiently accredited by our independent study of such transcendental literature. This is the importance of having our Bhaktivedanta purports, that Srila Prabhupada has provided us entrance into this great science because a practitioner of the science has bestowed that fortune on us, that mercy on us, and is letting us into that transcendental order if we have the right attitude, if we develop some qualities of a bona fide disciple, then the transference of knowledge from the spiritual master and between the spiritual master and the disciple is made very smooth.
These temples are also important, and that's why Srila Prabhupada established temples and wrote books, because taken together they complement one another. The temples without Bhagavatam are not very effective, and Prabhupada gave the example of the Hindu religion has many temples in India, but they don't generally teach Bhagavatam. They don't teach the Vedas. They have ringing the bells, and that's nice, but it's not sufficient for proper education. And therefore there has to be the Bhagavatam also. But as you said, Bhagavatam reading, bookworm, one can become a bookworm, but that's not effective unless he knows how to practice also. Practice bhakti. And bhakti is practiced. 9 processes of bhakti is given by Prahlad Maharaj. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Harasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Sakyam, Japam, Vedanam. And the hearing and chanting portion is the Bhagavad Gita, primarily. And the deity worship, that is the Panchatriki Vidi. And they are brought together like 2 tracks of a train tracks. So the train can ply very smoothly. Similarly, with the Panchatriki Vidi, deity worship, temple functions, festivals, all these types of activities, worship, along with the Vedic knowledge of hearing and chanting, becomes a perfect vehicle for transporting a person to the spiritual world.
Thank you so much. I've been thinking about this word practice. This word practice. You know, some people say practice makes perfect. And when it comes to this process of devotional service, that's a guarantee made by the acharyas and the Vedic literature that it's scientific. So what's wonderful is that this practice is absolute. So the practice of bhakti yoga, these 9 processes of devotional service, they're not different than the Lord himself, which is actually the goal of such practice. So it's very wonderful that, you know, as opposed to the practice that we do to become a very expert in some material science, we're never satisfied until achieving a certain platform. Of course, in the material world, that's always temporary. We may become a great athlete, but one day our ankle will give us little pain. And it's just finished. I can't even, can't play. And just like a little something, And that mechanism in the ankle, it's so sensitive, so fragile. I put so many hours into that. Then one little nodule or one little, blood vessel or one little crack or something in one of my joints, and then practically can't, get the result of all that practice, which is why I was working so hard anyway to get a result. So practice in bhakti is so amazing. It's so wonderful. Also, another word I've been thinking about is transit. Mars just finished up there that the programs and the festivals and all these things, in conjunction with this Vedic knowledge from the Srimad Bhagavatam, our deity worship, and in conjunction with this Vedic knowledge, it makes a perfect vehicle for going back to Godhead. So we're in transit. There's always some direction that we're going. We're always going some direction. The karmis are persons who are unknowingly or knowingly performing materialistic activities. They have a direction too, right? They're in transit too towards some destination, some result. Of course, we know that the whole material world is a vehicle for reformation of the soul to learn the spiritual, to reawaken our spiritual identity as a servant of Krishna. So the whole material world is moving in that direction, actually, but there's temporary destinations where all the persons who are performing materialistic activities are gliding down to the lower species of life. And Krishna describes that he actually throws them down. Persons who are mischievous and envious, that always, contrary to his will, he's actually moving them that way. But if we take this vehicle, then our destination is sure. And Krishna gives us so many of those guarantees too in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Janma karma chama divyam evam yoveti tattva taktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti swarjana. He says, taktva deham, when you throw away this body, then punarjanma naiti, right? Punarjanma naiti. Don't actually attain, na eti, naiti. You don't actually go or attain punarjanma, repeated birth. But mam eti, you come to me. So Arjuna, my dear Arjuna. So, and that's just one of them. Krishna gives others. This, this body is in transit too. This body is in transit towards death. But if we use this body by following this perfect system, these train tracks, then the human body becomes a great vehicle. Just like there's that one verse that this is the vehicle, this is the ship. We stay in the ship by following the program. But who can get in that vehicle? Who can apply this process is only one, a soul who's embodied in the human form of life. So the human form of life is also likened to a vehicle, a ship to ply across the ocean of nescience. So that's one thing I've been thinking about, is that this transit, that there's always some direction, there's always some destination. We set our sights and we follow the course. We have an expert captain in Srila Prabhupada, and we can reach the destination. And persons who, we were speaking about this the other night, that persons who are so-called guides on the path towards the destination, even if we know the destination is transcendence, right? We may not know exactly what that means. It's important for us to understand what that means. But if we talk to somebody and he says, yeah, you can reach your destination by going this direction, but he points in the wrong direction, factually, in terms of, it's not the most direct. So then one who takes that advice goes a long way away from the actual goal. So that person has done a disservice. And Prabhupada would describe that persons who are giving their own, concocted presentation of the Vedic knowledge, they're like that. They are giving wrong directions and they're misrepresenting this science and this culture, and they've done a great disservice to humankind, and they're actually offenders at the lotus feet of Krishna. And this is important for us because more or less what we're doing is one. I heard one sannyasi in our movement. He was describing that actually, when one takes sannyas, he's actually going to war with all these bogus philosophies, and he goes around battling these other philosophies. What's very interesting is that he doesn't, usually the advanced devotee, he's not, it's not for his own, for a fact, the devotee doesn't perform this battle for his own sense gratification or aggrandizement. It's on behalf of Krishna. So that battle is righteous and the most moral. And persons may misunderstand, like some people would say Prabhupada was being too harsh. Some Indians would tell him, like, Swamiji, why did you have to criticize, these other people, these other persons? And Prabhupada said, well, I'm like the police, I have to find out, the thief. So, and actually people who are sincere, they see that. And even if they themselves are bearers of that improper conceptions, when they are sincere, if somebody's actually sincere and wants to know the full truth, then when their conception is sliced to pieces by the sadhu, they're actually a little bit pleased about it. Because actually they know they want the real thing. And they feel that this person is actually not envious of me, not trying to put me down, trying to lift me up. So that's such a person. From such a person, we have to learn this science. And we're very fortunate that we have a whole entire association of persons striving in that direction. And we are being led by Srila Prabhupada, and who is a bona fide representative of Shukadev Goswami. So just as Shukadev Goswami learned this science, the science of God, postgraduate study of the science of God from his father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, we can also learn from the representative of Shukadev Goswami. Okay, thank you so much. The devotees can share something. Dr. Fred?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. I'm a little confused because yesterday we were hearing how, in Bhakti we're not focused on result, and we hear in Bhagavad Gita that we're not focused on the results of our actions. But destination brings up the idea of, an actual place of result. It's not like a trophy, it's an actual place. And we're trying to get, or it seems that we're trying to get to the abode of Krishna or wherever he deems us to be. So I was wondering if you can clarify, this transit or this ship that's taking us somewhere, which seems to be a direct result of the actions of service and bhakti.
Once one's engaged in devotional service, he's attained the destination. That's it. To come to the level of devotional service is the goal of all the knowledge, all the Vedas. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that by all the Vedas I'm to be known. And then in Bhagavad Gita he says, how can I be known? Bhakti amam abhijanati. Only by devotional service can I be understood. So if one is fortunate enough to be engaged in devotional service, he's reached the destination. And of course, within that, there are lower levels and higher levels of devotional service. And one continues, and naturally, the level of understanding and transcendence, all those embellishments, realizations go on increasing, because that's the nature of the Absolute, that's the nature of spiritual things. So it's not destination in the sense that if he doesn't reach there, then he's wasting his time. There's no waste of time, because by performing devotional service, even if one is immature and falls down, there's no loss or diminution, and he continues whenever he gets the desire. Devotional service can be revisited at any point, and Krishna is happy to resume right where the relationship was so-called discontinued. He doesn't ever consider the relationship to be discontinued, because he's always the father, and the living entity is always the son. But the son sometimes becomes confused and forgets that. Therefore, he needs to be brought back into the association of the devotees.
So, say one doesn't have spiritual master and they're on the path for spiritual master. Is that, are they still in devotional service, or if they're doing service under temple authorities, but they're not fully surrendered because they haven't taken the Diksha Guru, are they still really considered in devotional service, or is it only once one is Diksha initiated? Are they in devotional service?
Yeah, so Prabhupada has a statement where he says, unless one takes initiation from the bona fide spiritual master, the real connection with Krishna consciousness is not made. But, and that statement, you know, that's there, but we have to become purified enough to accept shelter from a bona fide guru. And the only thing that actually purifies the heart, purifies the desires, is devotional service. So Krishna is so merciful that by the strength of the pure devotees, we are able to perform the required, purificatory process. We chant, we dance on their order, and we are preparing ourselves for the next step. So there's 3 steps. There's 2 steps that are before initiation, and those are bona fide steps in the process towards love of God. And if we're on those, if we go fully into those, we make super rapid advancement, and ASAP will be initiated, you know. Maybe we can talk later. You can ask later. Okay. And if you want to share to the community, then maybe you can find some channel online to post it publicly, and then we can have the discussion thereafter. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.